Hello and welcome again to this risual public sector broadcast. Today I'm really pleased to be here at Enfield Council in London. I'm talking to Rocco Labellarte about digital transformation and the journey that the council has taken on digital transformation. Okay, welcome to this another public sector broadcast from risual. I'm really pleased to be in Enfield Council today alongside Rocco Labellarte. We're going to be talking about digital transformation here at the council and a journey to positive change that Rocco and his team have been doing. But first and foremost, I've got lots of questions for you, by the way, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
But before we start, would you be good enough to introduce yourself and
Sure.
how you've ended up at Enfield?
Absolutely. Great. Good to be talking with you as well. So Rocco Labellarte, as you said, interim assistant director for IT. I've been here just under a year now, coming into an interestingly exciting time for the council, I think, as they'd undertaken a journey of transformation. I came in, shall we say, about midway through, and over the last year we've actually topped and tailed, finished off quite a few of the projects that were already in train, started a few more as well, and really pushed quite hard on the aspects of innovation, I think, in technology as well. So a lot of technology, but also a lot of people and process as well involved. So yeah, a year of interesting change.
Excellent. And you've been around the block a bit, haven't you, Rocco?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
FCO and LGSS.
Yeah. So public and private sector. Worked for several years in Unilever, multinational. Calvin Klein as well. That was an interesting 5 years working in ladies' lingerie, and you can say whatever you like about that. But a fascinating experience as well. And latterly, maybe the last 10 to 15 years. In public sector, flipping between local and central government, and local government. So yeah, I've been around the blocks quite a bit and seen a lot of interesting change and transformation along the way.
So, can you give us a view of the council's footprint? Where the council is, for those that may not know, kind of footprint of your services.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I mean, Enfield Council is one of 30 plus London boroughs. We are actually the northernmost London borough, right at the very top, just touching on the M25. In terms of residents, over 300,000 residents within Enfield, and 40% of our territory is actually greenfield.
Wow.
So there's a lot of green space in Enfield. Very pretty place as well. In terms of demographic, it's a very cosmopolitan area. I think 2 of the 3 most spoken languages are Greek and Turkish.
Wow.
So there's an international feel to the place, and it's a very pretty place as well. And a lot of exciting stuff going on. Amongst the many things we're doing as part of the council is something called Meridian Water, which is one of the largest regeneration projects within London. I think there are 10,000 houses being built over the next 2 to 3 years as well. So there's a lot of inward investment in terms of the council. And we're also home to quite a few famous multinationals, Sony, Coca-Cola, just a couple of those that are based out of Enfield as well. So it's a fascinating place.
And when I was looking at your plan, I mean, there's 3 key parts of your plan, but inward investment, bringing that kind of sustainability into the region. You're really looking to bring tech companies and manufacturing into the region, aren't you? Yeah,
well, I mean, it's ideally placed, being so close to the M25 as well. You've got that sort of logistical crossroads that enables us to go north, south, east and west quite easily. It's 9 miles to the M1 from here, so just from the M25. So logistically, it's a very good place to be.
And really easy to get through from the central London. I mean, I've come down from the Midlands today. It's an hour down to Euston and about 40 minutes from here. Some great views from this building as well, back into the city.
Yeah, if you look outside from the 6th floor, you can see the Shard, amongst other things, and the smog. Excellent, really good. On a good day, anyway. Yeah.
2 benefits of the view.
Absolutely.
So, just in terms of I know we've been involved in helping you with your kind of digital transformation here, but what was really the catalyst for your plans to digitally transform here at the council?
Yeah, so I think there's a little bit of what every council does in our transformation journey. Certainly the pressures in terms of economics are one of the drivers for any kind of change that you deliver these days in local government. Purse strings are getting tighter, and we have a growing and ageing demographic as well. So how do you balance the two of having less money but more people to deal with? Enfield, like the rest of London, is growing. There are a lot of people moving into the Enfield area, so that demographic pressure is growing. people are getting older as well. So
Yeah.
part of the challenge is how we do things differently to deliver services to more people in a better quality, but with less money. I think that's certainly one of the things that drives transformation. Second thing is, it's a great buzzword. I think a few years ago it was all about channel shift,
Yeah.
then it was about shared services, then it was about cloud, now it's about digital transformation. Probably one of the big four consulting firms came up with the phrase digital transformation and everyone hooked onto it, so away it goes. It's really a continuation of the same journey, which is about how do we refresh our infrastructure as time goes by, the technology, how do we address the pressures that are growing in terms of that, and how do we do it in a way that changes the structure of the organisation. So really, they're the drivers in terms of what we've done. The fact that we've labelled it digital transformation is only a small component of what we've actually had to do in terms of change.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because I've presented quite a lot of kind of these forums, and transformation continuum is the two words that I kind of use, because it is a continuous process, isn't it? This isn't about getting to an end result now. It's about changing and transforming and having a platform for change that can continue as the council grows and matures and changes and innovates.
Yeah, so I mean, I have a view on transformation is that it's probably the wrong word, and it's about keeping pace with change.
Yeah.
If you look two to 3 years ago, in a previous life, in a previous council, cloud was very much at the forefront in terms of discussion and moving things from your in-house data centres to hosted solutions and call them cloud. So we're talking infrastructure as a service. At the time, everyone was talking about it. Very few were doing it. I was one of those, and I think Government Digital Services actually published a blog saying that where I was working at the council was one of the first in the UK to actually move to the cloud. The reality was we were trying to move to the cloud, but it was very difficult then to actually get everything into the cloud, because we were running legacy systems that weren't designed for that platform. If you fast forward 2 years now, I think working with yourselves and Microsoft on the Azure platform, we've actually managed to achieve that now. And part of the reason is that cloud environment's matured, which is a good thing. People have got a lot more experience, which counts a lot. But also a lot of our systems are now being designed to work in that environment. And so what 2 years ago was hype, shall we say, today is becoming a reality, and that's good. But that's not transformation per se, that's just keeping pace with change. It's where technology is going, it's where organisations are going, and we need to keep up with that.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? 10 or 12 years ago, working at Microsoft, we used to talk about this infrastructure maturity model, coming from the Gartner maturity model, which came from the Carnegie maturity model, kind of moving through these stages to the kind of dynamic, innovative movement, flexible movements. I guess cloud has a massive impact on that, doesn't it? Because moving through those stages of maturity, or moving to a point of dynamic systems with the cloud can happen really at a snap of the fingers nowadays, can't it?
It can do, and I think in terms of game changers, the platforms such as Azure are game changers in terms of having reached the level of maturity, I think, now where the people working in those spaces and the systems that can move into those spaces are now sort of aligning. It becomes a different world, it becomes a different way of doing business. I think the challenge for local government is the fact that there are over 400 local government organisations across the UK. Each of them is at a different stage in their investment cycle. If I, for example, last year invested in tin and a brand new data centre somewhere, would I be likely to move to the cloud straight away? Probably not.
No.
It's going to take 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
So it's interesting when you look at research and central government do that about uptake in the cloud. Some say, how come there's not been as much uptake as we expected? And I would argue the reason for that is simply that we're in a cycle.
Yeah.
The investment cycle is there, and it will take 7 years for people to get there. So if you look at the maturity of software that's working in that space, if you look at the investment cycle of councils and other organisations, and then the actual cost of change, because there is a cost to change.
Absolutely.
Those are all elements that factor into cloud. The cloud solution itself will be ideal, and ultimately people will have to move there, just as we move from analog to digital. But where they're on the cycle, the investment that they need to make and so forth, are things that will determine when they do it, more so than the actual maturity of cloud itself, which I think is there now.
And you mentioned on a couple of occasions there, you know, all of this change has people in the mix of all of this, whether it's the people that you're serving, the citizens that you're serving out there, and you've got a diverse demographic, as you said, or the people in the organisation, or people close to the technology in your teams that are moving through. Can you just give us a perspective on how this transformation and change, and how you've dealt with keeping the people at the centre of all of that, and helping to kind of cope with the change?
Well, keeping people at the centre has actually been probably the most difficult. Yeah. Technology in itself is relatively straightforward. You design it, you put it in, it either works or it doesn't. And if it doesn't work, you get your wrist slapped and you try again. So it's quite inanimate. Yeah. But both internally, in terms of staff, in terms of engagement with stakeholders, in terms of designing things that have actually improved the customer experience, I think with hindsight, we've learnt a lot about how not to do things, rather than having started out in the right place and saying this is how you do it and getting it right. So things such as the design of the process, for example. Now with hindsight, and that's what we're going back to revisit in terms of our systems thinking work, is that actually we need to look at the entire system and its from end to end. What we actually did was take existing processes and try to shoehorn them into a new technology, which doesn't work. So if I take an example, we built a customer account in our Dynamics platform, and one of the key metrics that we had at the beginning of our exercise was how many residents could we get to sign up to the Enfield Connected account, which at the time probably had a logic. I wasn't here, so I wasn't part of that decision-making process. But when you look at it today, with hindsight, we've had about 64,000 take-up. Our expectation was to get to maybe 100,000, but that was a number plucked out of the air. The question is, so what? So we've got 64,000 people that are signed up. What are they actually doing? So the reality is we assigned a figure, an arbitrary figure, to an arbitrary target, because at the time it felt like the right thing to do. But with hindsight, actually what we should have been saying was, we need to understand our demographic, what people are doing, how they're interacting with the council, and which one of those are the people that we really need to try and get into an Enfield Connected account so we can get more information about them, we can make their experience
serve them better.
Yeah. So I think the hindsight of the experience is really what teaches us what we need to do. Likewise, in terms of requirements capture. So there was an impetus, there was an imperative to actually drive as quickly as possible to get the systems in place. Again, a sort of mindset of, if you give me a new tool, I'll be able to do everything. But actually the reality is that it is just a tool. And so again, with hindsight, we've learned that what we should have done was probably go a little bit slower. In terms of our engagement with the business, make sure that somebody from the business side signed up to that specification. Because what we found is we try to build it in haste, and often we found that when we go back to the business with a finished product, the business says, well, actually that's not quite what we wanted. And then we're running to find specifications that maybe weren't specified.
And that's critical, isn't it? Like you
It
say,
is.
Stakeholder engagement, business stakeholder engagement,
It's
driving
fundamental.
transformation rather than IT, the kind of tail wagging the dog in many respects, isn't it? If you think of it like that.
I mean, the analogy is, we think that if we go into a shop that sells cooking utensils and buy all the latest cooking utensils, we'll be able to cook a great cake. Well, actually, you won't. They're just the tools of the trade. Well, actually, what you need is somebody that can cook and a good recipe. And what we didn't have sometimes was that. I mean, we were lucky, actually, in many respects, that a lot of what we did in our first phase of transformation was predicated around infrastructure. So in that context, getting the right tools was the first step. What we're going through now as a second phase is actually now finding the right cooks, getting the right recipes, teaching people how to cook and actually do that properly. So in that we're quite lucky.
And good engagement with the board, the people at the top.
I think the nice thing about this council is it's got an appetite for innovation. So if we run through the things that we've done over the last 18 months, so the Azure platform. I mean, from my perspective, when I walked through the door nearly a year ago, one of my first concerns was, is this going to be another problematic birth? Is this going to be a difficult pregnancy? But actually, the confidence I got from the teams, the risual team, the Microsoft team, and my own internal team, sort of said, okay, they sound confident, not cocky, which is good. And I was always a little bit cautious about how well we were going. But then when you hear 25% done, 50% done, 75% done, and along the way, one or two blips, minor, nothing major, you kind of go, actually, this has gone really smoothly. And And the nice thing I find is, running an IT organisation, we've got over 100 people, 120 plus if we include the development teams that we've brought in. That's a lot of people that are running a lot of projects at the same time. And for one that complex to go that smoothly, when you're looking at moving 300, 400 business systems across, it's pretty
That's
impressive.
brilliant. It is
Yeah,
brilliant.
it's very good.
So the pregnancy turns into a healthy, bouncing baby boy then?
Absolutely, yeah. Touch wood anyway. It's almost there now. I think we've got about 2 weeks to go until the birth, so we'll see.
So you talked about so many people there, your own. So just coming back to the IT people, I guess there's, when you start to move things into the cloud, there is this concept of almost like turkeys voting for Christmas, isn't it? When some of the IT teams start to be a little bit sensitive around where's this going, where's the technology, where are my machines that I've known and loved and kind of coveted for so long. How have you kind of dealt with that kind of mentality or suspicion, and how have you repositioned the skills in the team to kind of cope with that change as well?
I think there's always the risk if you don't have a longer term plan, that it's not clear where you're going. So one of the areas that we're very, very much focused on is around business intelligence, and also AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cognitive agents and so forth. And the journey should never be the next 6 months, the next year. The journey should be the next 3 years, the next 5 years in terms of that, because that paints then the picture of not only where you're going as an organisation, but also where the people that are working within your space are going. So if I give you an example from today, so I met with the web team. We've been working with them for about 6 months to make a number of improvements to the website, both the lipsticks, so the look and feel of the website, but also minor enhancements to improve the customer journey. Now, there was a long list when I joined of minor issues that needed addressing, and we put together a 6-month plan to deliver that and move forward. As part of that, we also painted for the team what was going to come beyond that in terms of that, and part of that was introducing new skills. So, for example, we've introduced WordPress for delivery of our microsites. Why? Because from a cost effectiveness perspective, it's great. WordPress does what it says on the tin, is an open source solution, a lot cheaper than going out and spending £500,000-600,000 to build 20-30 microsites with an independent provider. But more importantly, it builds skills internally within the team that they previously didn't have. So that's one aspect of that. Today we were talking about that. Another council came to visit us today, told us that their entire content management system, their website, is based on WordPress. I shared that with the team and said, and that's potentially where we might go tomorrow, if need be. So it's about giving people the vision of the future. AI is another one, Power BI is another one. So if till today we've been reactive in terms of stuff, we're now starting to build things that actually have new skills and new requirements, and that's for people that have got the appetite to go that way.
The AI and machine learning conversation could spin us off for another half an hour or an hour, I'm sure. But great leadership, this is really important, isn't it? And when you're looking at transformation and change, just keeping that leadership really, really solid, and keeping the vision for the whole of the team really, really clear as well.
I think, communications can be overstated sometimes. I think good communications is a little bit like playing the piano well. If you play too many notes, it can sound a bit too muddy. Sometimes less is more, but you've got to hit the right notes, and I think communications is like that. Communication is one of those things that you've got to do effectively. It's not just a case of volume. So again, we've never ever quite got it right, but we've been striving towards sort of hitting that perfect set of notes really, in terms of
brilliant. So if there's other councils out there listening in to us today, I know you've been kind of putting some of this into the conversation today, but what were the things that you would really kind of highlight as kind of, not necessarily concerns, but things to think about, really kind of things to kind of take into mind and to before you kind of enter into this kind of project?
So maybe my top 5 list off the top of my head in terms of things to avoid or lessons learned. I think first thing, when you touched on this, is it needs strong leadership at the very, very top. So we're talking chief executive, we're talking the leader of the council, but also the executive as well need to be aligned in terms of it's not going to be easy, it's going to be bumpy, it's not all of IT's fault. Sometimes it's quite easy for part of an organisation to blame the technology component for a service, and actually you've got to appreciate that it is one team, we have to work together, and that means everyone being jointly accountable for the delivery of any change within the organisation. Otherwise it ends up as being a blame game, and that's never a good place to be. So that's definitely at the top of my list. I think, as you said, effective stakeholder management and communication is key. If you don't set the expectation right, then you're never going to win, no matter what. We live in a political world, which is local government, and there will be pressures all the time in terms of delivering a service that responds to resident and businesses' needs. So you've got to set the expectation in terms of what's realistic and what can and cannot be achieved within a certain time frame, and get buy-in for that. Otherwise, you're going to continuously be under pressure to deliver, and actually, the quality tends to fall from perspective. I think effective communication with your staff, so they're clear on what they're doing, and effective governance of the project is also key. From that perspective, if you don't know what you're meant to be delivering, don't know when you're meant to be delivering, and don't know where you are in terms of delivery, then it gets a bit difficult to actually assess how well you do.
Well, a good positive environment where everybody's been held to account, like you're saying, great teams, great communication, great leadership, great teams.
Yeah. One thing that's really fundamental, and I think this is key, is working well with partners. So all too often, and I've seen this so many times, you get a very good sales team come in that do an excellent sales pitch, great pack, price is right, and then when you sign on the dotted line, all of a sudden then reality kicks in. We've actually been very, very careful about choosing partners that want to partner with us rather than just want to work with us. And I think it's been self-evident that the way we've worked with those partners has been fundamental to succeeding. You don't want a partner just drawing a line saying, sorry, you've not signed a PO, therefore it stops. You want a partner that understands how we work, works with us, and says, actually, we're in this together. And I think across the piece, almost without exception, maybe one exception across a dozen partner organisations, we work very, very well, very closely as a team, and I think that's a good thing as well.
Yeah, that's great to hear, and we've seen that in local regional government where big outsourcers are in place, contracts are all written. There's no thou shalt not change the contract, or the change request takes weeks to do, and there's got to be a new way of a partnership and all of that, more agile, because the technology is demanding that, and the change and the program is demanding that, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like a referral system. I think that at some point we need to get to a point where in local government where instead of just bringing in a very large organisation to borrow our watch and tell us the time, which is what sometimes it feels like, it's to identify through our peer network, through the other councils, who are those organisations that work well with those councils, who are the ones that actually care about doing a good job, and engage with them, and that will shape the way industry works with us. And also not to reinvent the wheel. Shared services was an attempt, I think, in a certain respect to try and get organisations to come together to save money. And it's such a good idea that everyone set up a shared service. So now we have 400 councils and probably an equal number of shared services.
So thank you again for joining us for this public sector broadcast today here at Enfield Council. What a great conversation that was with Rocco. As you know, this is part of a series, so please do look us up on YouTube, and obviously do please like, share, and give us your comments as appropriate. Thanks a lot.